with Dr. Wazir Ali Muhammad Al Haq. How are you today?
Heavenly.
That's good, that's good.
And you?
I'm doing well, thank you, thank you. So I just wanted to bring you today. Let's talk about your life in California. How did that play a role in your experiences growing up? Because I know that's where you're originally from.
Well, that's where I was born. My father was born in General Hospital in Los Angeles. I was born in the subsequent General Hospital in Los Angeles. My earliest memories are in South Central Los Angeles, where my parents lived with my sister, who is 4 years my senior. We moved from Watts off of 112th Street to Compton in 1952. And my parents provided me with a great life, plenty of whatever I needed, clothing, money, food, experiences. So I really attribute anything that I am to the way my parents reared me.
That's good, that's good. So were your parents educated?
Well, my mother had a high school education. She's passed now. My father had a high school education. He was a musician until he became an employee for the Los Angeles School Board, where he worked as a pest control operator. And he had to attend college classes in order to move up the ranks. And so he supplemented his education with those classes, but he never attained a college degree, nor did my mother.
I see. Well, we know that you're highly educated. So how did growing up in California or that influence your decision to get highly educated?
Well, in California, communities are distinguished by the people who live in them. And when you travel to communities where there are universities or junior colleges, they typically are more beautiful than other communities. They have more foliage, grass, the houses are nicer. So I sort of made a mental connection between the beauty of these neighborhoods and the fact that they were in close proximity to a higher education institution.
I see. And when you were in California, what institution did you attend?
Oh, a lot. I attended El Camino Junior College, Compton Junior College, Long Beach City College, Long Beach State University, and California State University.
And what degrees did?
Oh, and also Pasadena City College.
Wow. And what degrees came about these?
Well, I got an engineering and technology degree from Pasadena City College in 1976. Pardon me, 1978. All of the other schools simply gave me the opportunity to explore different subjects. I studied physical education, I studied architecture, I studied biology. I just had a full range of exposure to various subjects, but I finally focused on engineering and technology in the 70s and finished a degree in that.
So what made you decide engineering and technology? Why?
Elijah Muhammad. Elijah Muhammad instructed those of us who were following him at the time to get an education and to get an education in the field of engineering.
I see, I see. And Elijah Muhammad, let's talk about that. So you are a Muslim man?
Well, I work at being a Muslim. The word Muslim comes from the Arabic root salama, and it means a person of peace. Muslim takes on that meaning, a peaceful person or a person of peace. I try my best to be that. I'm not always successful.
Under the guidance of Elijah Muhammad?
Well, he is not the person who makes me a peaceful person. I have that responsibility and duty.
Okay. Well, who is Elijah Muhammad?
Who was he?
Who was?
He
Yes, I'm
was
sorry.
identified as a messenger of Allah to the so-called American Negroes in the United States.
Okay. And how did he have an impact on your life personally?
Well, at the time I was introduced to him, I was in the United States Army in Germany. And a friend of mine who was there also went on leave to the United States. He came back with a book written by Elijah Muhammad called Message to the Black Man in America. And that book revolutionized me.
Really?
Yes.
I see. And so, did you work with Elijah Muhammad personally?
No, I worked with his representative.
I see. I understand. So I know that there's a newspaper. Then it was Muhammad Speaks.
Right.
Yeah. So why does the Nation of Islam, and if you could explain what that is, why does it have its own newspaper?
Well, the Nation of Islam is a media phrase. The actual name is the Lost Found Members of the Nation of Islam in the West. And what it means is the individuals who are of African descent who live in the Western Hemisphere of our planet, many of them came from Islamic backgrounds when their ancestors were brought to the Western Hemisphere. So after about 5 generations, those individuals no longer knew where they were from, nor did they know of their Islamic heritage. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave us, through his teacher, the identity of lost, found members, people who had been lost from their history but were now found to be taught their history of the Nation of Islam. The Arabic phrase for Nation of Islam is Ummatullah, the community of believers in Allah in the West being the Western Hemisphere.
Right. Right. So, how is the Nation of Islam different from any other Muslim belief around the world?
Well, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said to us, life in the universe came from the blackness of space. And the life that evolved in the universe took on the color from which it came. So when we see this life form as humans, they are known to be the oldest humans on earth because they are the blackest humans on earth. And he said that if you disagree with him, simply do a simple study of dominant and recessive genetic traits with respect to melanin. And what we find is melanin is a dominant trait. It produces melanin, but it also produces a recessive trait called albinism, where there is no melanin. However, the reverse is not so. The unmelanated humans are unable to produce the darker or more melanated humans, and that goes through the entire spectrum, not just total albinism, but even if you find individuals who are what we call high yellow or brown, they often can reproduce their own complexion, but they can't produce darker complexions. So if you want to have a black-skinned child, you need to find someone who can contribute that black gene so that your child can be black.
Indeed. So that is the reason why we as people call ourselves, black? Or is that what Elijah Muhammad believed?
Well, that's what he taught us. He taught us that we took on the color out of which we came, which was the blackness of space, and that's why we have this melanation to our skin color.
Would you say that that's one of the reasons why Elijah Muhammad was so misunderstood by, say, white Americans?
No, Elijah Muhammad identified white Americans as devils. He said that when you study the word devil in the dictionary, it means a wicked and evil person. And he told us to go back and study our history. And as we studied our history, what we found was years of wicked and evil treatment. Some of the worst treatment that human beings have experienced on earth. I mean, castration, burnings, hangings, enslavement, where we were robbed of the knowledge of where we came from, our original language, just atrocities. And he said, any people who can do that to another people can be called devils. And because of that identification of Caucasians as devils, there was an antagonism between Europeans and Elijah Muhammad.
I see. I mean, yeah, I guess that explains why there would be some resentment. However, when you moved to Denver, you were working with Minister Farrakhan?
No, when I moved to Denver, I was working with Elijah Muhammad's son, Wallace Dean Muhammad.
I see. Okay. And why is he important to the Nation of Islam?
Oh, he's the individual who brought us the message from his teacher. You see, before Elijah Muhammad, I didn't even think of myself as black. I didn't think of myself as original. I didn't think of myself as being connected to the human population from its very beginning. And what that allows you to do is to understand that any developments that we have on earth that derive from human beings ultimately started with your ancestors or my ancestors. So when he gave me my identity as an original human being, that connected me with people thousands and possibly millions of years old. So this connection with original people, no matter where they are on the earth, informs me of my own capabilities. So as you pointed out, I've graduated from a college in California, but 4 colleges in Colorado. I have 3 children. All of my children have MBAs, and they're involved in some profession. One of them is a medical doctor. He's a psychiatrist. The other has a very large contract with the city of Denver, and my daughter has her own business operation. So it is because of the information Elijah Muhammad gave me about my connection with human life that I found the motive for self-development and progress.
I see. So why Colorado? What made you decide to move here to Colorado?
Well, you asked me about was I with Farrakhan when I came, but no, I was with Elijah Muhammad's son, and he sent me here to be a religious organizer for, we can say the Nation of Islam, but it was really for the Muslim community.
Okay, here in Denver. So what did that look like for you then?
Well, I came to a different culture. I came to Colorado from California, and there was a misunderstanding of my style. There was a misunderstanding of my intention, and they booted me out after a year.
Oh no. I see how there could be a difference in diasporas and things there. So a lot of people in Denver, however, they seem to misunderstand Minister Farrakhan. Could you tell us a little bit about why you think that is?
I think it's because he is an extension of Elijah Muhammad, and the same antagonism that existed for Elijah Muhammad exists for Minister Farrakhan.
Of course.
I have found Minister Farrakhan to be a genius, and he has assisted me personally in identifying and clarifying my life goals and my life purpose. And as a consequence, I now work on the African continent.
I see. As a consequence?
Yes.
Okay. So the Nation of Islam, it has its own newspaper. I know then with Elijah Muhammad, it was Muhammad Speaks, and now it is The Final Call.
Yes.
Can you tell us what's the difference between those two?
Well, obviously the names, but
Yes.
the name Final Call actually was used by Elijah Muhammad early in his work.
Okay.
And Minister Farrakhan, being an extension of the work of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, went back, studied the history of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and decided that he would use that early name for the newspaper that he revived.
Nice. Why does the Nation of Islam have its own newspaper?
To get its message to the public. And we had a general rule that for every person we could get our newspaper, we could get into their hands, 4 persons would actually eventually see that paper. So when you're trying to get your message out, it helps to have a media tool. And if you don't have television or you don't have other digital material, but the Final Call actually is now digital, and you can go online and you can get copies of it.
Nice.
So it has the purpose of propagating to the public the message of the organization.
Understood. And is that what you were doing when you moved here to Denver with the son of Elijah Muhammad?
No, although I did work with some of the newspapers, it was on a limited basis because Wallace had stopped the production of the Muhammad Speaks newspaper, and he began a new newspaper called Bilalian News. But I was working in capacity of the leader of the organization or the group, so I didn't have as much time to propagate with newspapers as I had to speak. And so I did a lot of speaking engagements. I interacted with a variety of community organizations. We put on dinners and programs that would expose us to the general community. And ultimately, I gave messages each week to the people who came.
I see. Now, earlier you mentioned that as a consequence, you do business on the continent of Africa.
Yes.
Let's talk about that, specifically your business in Ghana.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, our business in Ghana is to feed Ghanaians. So our approach was where to find a niche where we could be operational and beneficial to the country. What we found after trying a housing project was that every person in Ghana that we know of and that we're familiar with eats rice, but they don't eat Ghanaian rice. They eat imported rice. There's a very, very small percentage of persons who eat Ghanaian rice. And in our investigation and research, we found that was because the rice is not well refined. It's not well processed. So we said, and when I say we, I'm speaking of, at that time, my wife and 2 other gentlemen from Ghana. What can we do to process rice so that the rice that is processed will be competitive with the other imported rice that people are eating? And we figured out we could go outside of Ghana, we could find machines that would do the processing, and if we could but raise the funds to bring those machines into the country and set up factories, we could take naturally grown Ghanaian rice, process it equally or better than the imported rice, and make it competitive in the Ghanaian market. And that's what we do.
I see. And it's been successful so far?
Yes.
Indeed. So What is the plan for those rice making machines? Where do you see happening with those machines in the near future?
Well, I see our efforts spreading throughout the continent because Ghana, as you know, is the first independent African country, which means the problems that Ghana goes through because of the lack of development, the lack of technology, the lack of finance, are are also true in other countries exponentially. So you can move from Ghana to, say, Cote d'Ivoire, they too will be eating and consuming imported rice more than rice grown in Cote d'Ivoire. Recently, the president of Senegal walked out into the rice fields of Senegal and said, we must not just produce, but process and consume our own rice. So our vision is that over the rest of our lives, these machines will find their place in various countries, and the processing of the rice grown in those countries will be local, and the distribution and marketing and consumption of the rice in those countries will be more rice that is grown and processed in those countries as compared to rice that is consumed from imported product.
I see. So to sustain economic wealth.
Well, first of all, we think about feeding people at a cost that doesn't exploit. And unfortunately, because of tariffs and other motives, imported rice is high. It's higher than it needs to be, but the people who are importing the rice are trying to make money.
Right.
You know, profit is a motive. Well, if that's the key for them, we can take that principle but not have the same greed. We can reduce the amount of cost involved in producing the product. Thus, we can lower the price in the marketplace, and people can get a product that's just as good as any imported product, but at a reasonable, affordable price. And thus, that leaves more money in the people's pockets to increase the movement of currency through the country.
Indeed, indeed. Sounds like a stellar plan.
I'm loving it.
Yes. Indeed, indeed. I mean, you see, it's very wise, man, very wise. And, you know, just how have you used here in Denver, how have you used your skill sets to help the Denver community?
I raised my children.
Can you elaborate?
Well, I told you, my son's a medical doctor.
Yes.
There ain't a lot of them, especially like us.
Oh, yes.
You know, but the boy he's got a bachelor's degree in biology. He's got a MBA in, obviously, business, and he's got a doctorate in medicine, and he's now in a residency for psychiatry. My daughter, she's got 2 masters, and she's raising her family as a mother and a wife, and she has her own business operating. My other son, I told you, I named him Sudan after the country. Sudan, he's just a fireball. He's so smart and intelligent and honest and good. And this is my contribution to the society at large. I didn't raise any children that's going to hurt us. I raised children along with their mother, and actually after their mother, because she was the primary person, who are going to contribute to Denver, to Colorado, and hopefully to the country and then to the world.
Yes, indeed.
So rather than looking to help those who are not part of my bloodline, I look to my bloodline first. And now I'm looking at my grandchildren, getting them technologically educated and making sure that they have the resources to get higher education. That's what I do.
That's good. That's good. So you're saying it starts in the home. You know, you have to instill strong values in education and.
Well, if you recall, I think you asked me earlier What did I attribute my own educational attainment to? And I said my parents. And my parents are not people who were out in the public doing a lot of social community work. They were out trying to make money, trying to build a home for themselves, trying to make sure that their children had a future, a predictable future that they wanted to finance. So that's where I got my values from. And Elijah Muhammad said, look, there's a big field for the wide awake man to work out in. What he meant by that is because of slavery, imperialism, colonialism, and what Dr. Nkrumah called neocolonialism, the people of African descent are suppressed all over the planet.
Very much so.
That means there's opportunity to go in and utilize this great wealth we have as Americans for the development and uplift of people of African descent everywhere.
Yes.
And that's what I choose to do. After I got my children on track, then I went back to our continent.
I understand. And so to improve the conditions, of the African American community here in Denver, what else have you done? I know you said we talked about the schools and.
Yeah, one of my former wives, because I had a lot of wives, one of my former wives, she used to have a school, and she held a school and made a lot of money by having the school, educated a lot of people. One of my other wives has a healthcare business that she operates and seems to do pretty well with. But me, I'm just a person who does not believe you can change a community by reaching out. My view is you change a community by reaching in, and whatever it is the community needs, you become that. And so you can talk to another man I could talk to another man for years about what he should be doing to make our community better. Or I can talk to myself and put into action those ideas and make my community better. Right. And that's what I choose to do. I don't reach out as much as I reach in.
I see. And it's worked so far.
Well, I'm pleased.
Yes, indeed. That's good. So if you were to give any guidance or any words of advice to our future leaders of our community, of the Black community, what would you say to someone looking to be as peaceful within themselves as you are?
That's so difficult. I don't think I'm qualified to tell anybody what else to do for their life. Because each of us are individuals and we have an entire history of experiences. So it's difficult for me to try to give advice to a large population of people. Right. On a one-on-one basis, when I know the person's history, I can give them advice. But generally speaking, I don't feel myself qualified to do that.
Well, on an individual level, how have you seen fit to provide knowledge to individuals? Because individuals do make community.
Well, what I'll do is, say, for example, there's a student who's in school having trouble with mathematics. Mm-hmm. Well, because of my engineering background and my education of my son in his sciences, I'm able to sit down and become that person's tutor. Mm-hmm. And I will tutor them until they graduate. And, generally, I won't charge them. As a lawyer, I represent people. I just won an appeal for a guy that allowed him to stay in the United States, and that wasn't the first one. And sometimes I get acquittals where people are charged with crimes, and I'm able to help them in that way. It just depends on the individualized situation. Right. But trying to make a broad, I'm not a king or anybody, I'm not a Farrakhan or anybody like that who got words for the whole world. I'm just a brother who out here trying to make it, and trying to make sure that I don't get hit in the head by this next cat who ain't making it. Right. So what I'll do is, like my wife got mad at me one day. I ran into a brother, and the brother had just got out of jail. Now, I don't know if you ever been in jail, but I've been in jail. So, jail ain't no, huh?
Been.
Yeah, jail ain't no place to come out of with nothing.
Indeed.
So he didn't have nothing. And he said, brother, look, man, I just got out of jail. I ain't got nothing. So I said, okay. So I said, wait here. And I went over to the bank. I got some money out the bank. I gave it to him. So my wife, she said, why you get that man that money? I said, well, he needed it. He needed it. Well, we need it. Well, we can get some more.
Right.
I'm not no criminal. I can, I charge about $200 an hour for my work. So I don't have no problem, getting money. But this man, he did have a problem getting money. And if I didn't give it to him, then when I'm walking down the street one night on 16th Street Mall, he might be the very dude that hit me in the head to take something. So what I tried to do is help him before he hurt me. And that's my general approach. Help before you get hurt.
Indeed. And so as an active attorney, do you find yourself, is that what you keep in mind when you're practicing as an attorney?
No, I'm trying to get paid.
Okay.
Trying to get paid.
And, how has your spirituality, being a Muslim man, how has that contributed to the man you are?
I have no spirituality. Absolutely none.
Really?
Yes, I am a materialist.
Huh.
A total, absolute materialist. In other words, for me, everything in life begins and ends materially. So I take this from a verse in the Quran. Those Arabs or Arabic-speaking people will understand this. Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-hayyul qayyum la ta'khudhuhu sinatun wa la nawm. Lahu ma fi samawati wa ma fi al-ard. Man dhalladhi yashfa'u indahu illa bi'ithni ya'lamu ma bayna aydihim wa ma khalfahum. And it goes on. But essentially, I have come to the understanding that it is talking about, that verse is talking about the physical material universe as Allah. Not a spiritual being, but the material universe is Allah. And so I have no spirituality at all. But I know that there's nothing that's going to help me get anything done except me and whoever I can get to help me. So therefore, I don't rely upon anything spiritual.
I see. All material.
Only material. Because the last time I tried to eat a spiritual meal, I was just as hungry as I could be.
I see. Indeed. And well, Brother Wazir, any last words?
Yes.
Anything you would like to say, would like the world to know?
Yes. My father's name is Henry E. Seagraves. The E stands for Edward. And my father gave me the life that I have. And I love him with all of the fibers in my being. And I want to acknowledge him and honor him through these words to let you all know that whatever good you think you recognize in me, it is only because of him. He is a great, 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 great man, and he has made me to be whatever value you see.
That's beautiful. And I do thank him for this man that I see before me. And thank you so much for your time today, Brother Wazir.
Thank you.
And I appreciate all the insight that you've given us today. Thank you very much.
And thank you.
No problem.